Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Monday, July 6, 2015. Yes, hopefully everyone had a fantastic Independence Day within the United States of America. And I do have to pay homage to the people in Greece by telling the bankers to stick it when it comes to austerity. It's going to be a little rough. It's happening all around Europe with the European Union and so forth. When you have the 6 corporate tyrannical bankers out there trying to run our lives, it is very treacherous. And even Thomas Jefferson and many of the founding fathers warned us about it. But I'm going to be talking about what's going on in Greece, Puerto Rico, something on Hillary Clinton, and information on the USS Liberty. A letter to Rockwell, to one of the pastors at the church, and something happened in New Mexico, which is pretty interesting. So it'll be mostly some international, so a little mixed batch. So try to not to be non-trending either. But the first thing I'm going to be addressing here came from humansarefree.com, and I'd like to thank David Icke, who put this out on his Twitter page, and we do share, him and I, we follow each other, which is really neat. It caught my eye, and I go, I gotta address this. This one's entitled, Nuclear Chemist Publishes Paper Detailing Aluminum Poisoning of Humanity via Geoengineering. And it says here, and this was done by, I don't know the author's name yet. Okay, it starts from here. Within the past couple of years alone, the concept of geoengineering has sparked a growing interest, which seemed to be accelerating at a rapid rate within the academic world. It's also ignited a heavy interest in policy making, which is no surprise, a given fact. We are talking about geoengineering, the entire global climate, response to global climate change. Hey, interesting. That's exactly what geoengineering is, a response to destructive human activity, which we have yet to seize. And it involves injecting stratospheric particles, aerosols, into the atmosphere to, again, reduce the effect of global climate change. For example, SPICE is a United Kingdom government-funded geoengineering research project that collaborates with the University of Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, and Bristol to further examine the idea of solar radiation management, or SRM. And some of the candidates particle to spray in the air proposed by SPICE, to name a few, are, and here's a source link to that: sulfate, sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide, Tatiana, silicon carbide, calcium carbonate, alumina, silicia, and zinc oxide, which is a few groundbreaking papers. Dr. Marvin Hurden, PhD, a nuclear chemist, geochemist, and cosmochemist, just most noted for deducing the composition of the inner core of Earth as being nickel silicide, not partial crystallized nickel iron metal, has published a groundbreaking paper in the peer-reviewed journal Current Science, Indian Academic of Sciences, titled Aluminum Poisoning of Humanity and the Earth's Biota by Calcine Geoengineering Activity, Implications for India. The abstract reads as follows: in response to an urgent call through an article in Current Science for assistance to understand the geological association of high aluminum mobility with human health in the Gagna alluvial plain, I describe evidence of Calcine geoengineering activity that has occurred for at least 15 years and which has escalated sharply in the last 2 years. The geoengineering activity via tanker jet aircraft, it places a non-natural toxic substance in the Earth's atmosphere, which with rainwater liberates highly mobile aluminum. Further, I present evidence that the toxic substance is coal combustion, fly ash, calcine dispersal of coal, fly ash, and the resulting liberation of highly mobile aluminum. I persist is an underlying cause of the widespread and pronounced increase in neurological diseases, and as well as the currently widespread and increasing debilitation of Earth's biota. Recommendations are made for verifying whether the evidence presented here is applicable to the Ganga-Ovilian plan, and there are 2 link sources for these. So definitely, Current Science is a PDF format. It's 5 pages long, and there's another one there as well. It tells you all about it, so you can really take a chance and read this. It's really fascinating too. So definitely check that out. And I think there's another link. I'm gonna see what it is. Another source right here, very similar, nuclearplanet.com. All right, so definitely check it out. It's like 5 pages long. So right there. So it's very meritable. The paper goes on to discuss and cite publications which have detected heavy metals like aluminum, barium, strontium, and more in rainwater, fly ash, and more. For example, during the period between July 2011 and November 2012, 73 water samples were collected and analyzed for aluminum and barium. 71 were collected from 60 different locations in Germany, 1 from France, and 1 from Austria. Aluminum was detected in 77% of the rainwater samples. There was also a very high barium concentration and a very high strontium concentration. It also discusses how these concentrations of metals are not the result in natural phenomena like volcanic explosions, for example. This isn't only groundbreaking publications that come from the world academia regarding this phenomenon a few months ago. Dr. Rose Cairns, PhD, who belongs to the University of Leeds School of Earth and Environment, published a paper in the peer-reviewed geophysical journal titled Climates of Suspicion, Chemtrail Conspiracy Narratives and International Politics of Geoengineering. She is also currently undertaking research into the governance of geoengineering as part of a multidisciplinary collaborative project between Sussex University, UCL, and Oxford University. There's a link for that as well on geogovernance-research.org. The project examined the social, ethical, and political implications of climate geoengineering proposals. And there's another link for that too. Okay, it's right there. So you can definitely look at these links. They're very meritable, as I repeat. In her paper, she describes developments in mainstream academic and political discourse regarding geoengineering and how climate modification also being discussed by the citizens of the world who use the term chemtrails is having a devastating ecological and health effects worldwide, according to her papers. She says here, understand the emerging politics of geoengineering and taking seriously claims regarding the importance of public participation requires an understanding of the whole discursive landscape around ideas of global climate control, including marginal ideas such as those held by chemtrail activists. Ignoring or dismissing these discourses out of hand as pathological or paranoid is to ignore potentially revealing insights about the emerging politics of geoengineering. So there's a link for that as well. So she also mentions that the analysis suggests a number of ways in which the chemtrail narrative may contain important insights and implications of the emerging politics of geoengineering that can not be dismissed out of hand as paranoid or pathological. Although Dr. Rose is a proponent of the chemtrail conspiracy, it's great to see another published paper by an academic taking a neutral perspective, recognizing the importance of these claims rather than dismissing them outright. The basic difference here is that geoengineering in the academic realm is strictly a proposal, which that these means of engineering Earth's climate are still not operational. When it comes to chemtrails advocates, they believe they are operational, as does the academic describe at the beginning of this article, along with many others. Truth is, there is to be a tremendous amount of information suggesting that these programs are indeed operational. Whether their intent is to modify the climate to combat the effects of global warming or to further some type of agenda is not clear. Evidence suggesting that these programs are already operational. In recent years, there has been a decline in the support for weather modification research and a tendency to move directly into operational projects. It's from the World Meteorological Association. And there's a source for that too. In addition to specific research programs sponsored by federal agencies, there are other functions related to weather modification which are performed in several places in the executive branch, various federal advisory panels and committees and their staffs. Establish or conduct in-depth studies and prepare reports to provide advice or recommendation or to coordinate weather modification programs have been housed and supported within executive departments, agencies, or offices. This is done by Arjun Walia, actually from Collective Evolution. Very interesting stuff. And like I said, my friends, I could tell you one thing. Mother Nature's a lot more complex than what it is. But when you hear about the whole thing on climate change and so forth, is it man-made? You got these individuals right now are trying to control the weather and blame it on you folks who create bonfires, who make babies, who uses plastic containers to try to recycle. They try to blame you, but you know what? This is backfiring because now more people are learning to see the bigger picture. So this is why you have to question everything what they tell you. I know one thing for sure: Al Gore would not like it if you take the initiative on doing your research and shove it down his throat, because he is one of those climate change fanatics, which he's nothing more than a bend over Bob to the New World Order, which I have taken the initiative of saying that to him at one of his speeches, November 14th, 2009, Saturday, up in Boca Raton, which is oh my goodness, I forgot the name of it. Pretty interesting, but it was at a park. It was at a park in shopping centers along in Boca Raton, but it's very interesting. But I'm glad I'll probably remember after the show is done. But it was a blast, I had to admit it. And but that's why folks got to pay attention, examine these papers yourself, make your own judgment, and please share this with everybody else. Because like I said, there's these bastards out there that want to control us like we're peons and peasants and want to blame us for Mother Nature. And you know what? Here's another example of why geoengineering is nothing more than a monumental deception, and it's unacceptable. It's against the laws of human nature. So when you watch these airplanes spray, especially 5, 6 in the morning, that's all chemtrails, nothing else. So all these people want to call us conspiracy theorists that is becoming a fact. So always observe responsibly. So definitely pay attention of what's in the skies. All right. Next one here. I'll be talking about a couple of articles on Greece. And this one here came out actually today. Nation of Change, that's the name of the website, nationchange.org. It says, entitled, Greece, What You're Not Being Told by the Media. And this was done by Chris Canthan from Nation of Change op-ed. And it came out yesterday. It says here, every single mainstream media has the following narrative for economic crisis in Greece. The government spent too much money and went broke. The generous banks gave them money, but Greece still can't pay the bills because it mismanaged the money that was given. It sounds quite reasonable, right? Except that it is a big, fat lie. Not only about Greece, but about other European countries such as Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Ireland, who are all experiencing various degrees of austerity. It was also the same big fat lie that was used by banks and corporations to exploit many African American, Asian, and African countries for many decades. Greece did not fail on its own. It was made to fail. So in other words, it was done by design. In summary, the bank wrecked the banks wrecked the Greek government and deliberately pushed it into unsustainable debt so that oligarchs and international corporations can profit from ensuing chaos and misery. Can we say divide and rule? If you're a fan of the mafia movies, you know how the mafia would take over a popular restaurant first. They would do something to disrupt the business, stage a murder at the restaurant, or start a fire. When a business starts to suffer, the Godfather would generously offer some money as a token of friendship. In return, Greasy Thumbs takes over restaurants' accounting. Big Joey's put in charge of the procurement, and so on. Needless to say, it is journey down a spiral of misery for an owner who will soon be broke and, if lucky, alive. Now, let's map the mafia story to the international finance in 4 stages. Stage 1, first and foremost reason that Greece got into trouble was a great financial crisis of 2008 that was a brainchild of Wall Street and international bankers. If you remember, banks came up with an awesome idea of giving subprime mortgages to anyone who can fog a mirror. They then packaged up all these ticking financial bombs and sold them as mortgage-backed securities at a huge profit to various financial entities in the countries around the world. A big enabler of this criminal activity was another branch of the banking system, the group of rating agencies, S&P, Fitch, and Moody's, who gave stellar ratings to these destined to fail financial products. Unscrupulous politicians such as Tony Blair got paid by big banks to peddle these dangerous securities to pension funds in municipalities and countries around Europe. Banks and Wall Street gurus made hundreds of billions of dollars in this scheme. But this was just stage 1 of their enormous scam. There was much more profit to be made in the next 3 stages. Stage 2 is when the financial bombs exploded. Commercial and investment banks around the world started collapsing in a matter of weeks. Governments at locals and regional levels saw their investments and assets evaporate. Chaos everywhere. Vultures like Goldman Sachs and other big banks profited enormously in 3 ways. 1, they could buy other banks such as Lehman Brothers and Washington Mutual for pennies on the dollar. 2nd, more heinously, Goldman Sachs and insiders such as John Paulson, who recently donated $400 million to Hartford, has made bets that these securities will blow up. Paulson made billions and the media celebrated his acumen. For an analogy, imagine the terrorists betting on a 9/11 from profiting from it. 3rd, to scrub salt in the wound, the big banks demanded a bailout from the very citizens whose lives the bankers had ruined. Bankers have chospa. In the U.S., they got hundreds of billions of dollars from taxpayers and trillions from the Federal Reserve Bank, which is nothing but a front group for the bankers. In Greece, the domestic banks got more than $30 billion of bailout from the Greek people. Let that sink in for a moment. That supposedly irresponsible Greek government had to bail out the hardcore capitalist bankers. I like to say crony capitalist bankers. So, which I understand what this person had to say, but I like to always rephrase it and clarify in good faith. Because Adam Smith right now would be rolling in his grave. Stage 3 is when the banks force government to accept massive debts. For a biology metaphor, considers a virus or a bacteria. All of them have unique strategies to weaken the immune system of the host. One of the proven techniques used by parasitic international bankers is to downgrade the bonds of a country. And that's exactly what the bankers did. Starting at the end of 2009, this immediately makes the interest rates, yields on the bonds go up, making it more and more expensive for the country to borrow money or even just roll over the existing bonds. From 2009 to mid-2010, the yields of a 10-year Greek bond almost tripled. This cruel financial assault brought the Greek government to its knees, and the banksters won their first debt deal of a whooping 110 billion euros. The banks also control the politics of nations. Can we say fascism or corporatism? In 2011, when the Greek Prime Minister refused to accept a second massive bailout, the banks forced him out of office and immediately replaced him with the Vice President of the ECB, European Central Bank. No elections are needed. Screw democracy. And what would this new guy do? Sign on the dotted line of every paperwork that the bankers bring in. Could we say a bend over Bob to the banksters? All right, now we'll continue on here. By the way, the very next day, the exact same thing happened in Italy, where the prime minister resigned, only to be replaced by a banker, economist puppet. 10 days later, Spain had a premature election where a banker puppet won the election. The puppet masters had the best month ever in November of 2011. A few months later, in 2012, the exact bond market manipulation was used when the banksters turned up the Greek bonds yields to 50%. This financial terrorism immediately had the desired effect. The Greek parliament agreed to a massive second bailout, even larger than the first one. Excuse me here. Now, here's another fact that most people don't understand. The loans are not just simple loans like you get from a credit card or a bank. These are loans come from with very special strings attached that demanded privatization of a country's assets. If you haven't seen Godfather 3, you will remember Hyman Roth, the investor who was carving up Cuba among his friends. Replacement Hyman Roth with Goldman Sachs or the IMF Monetary Fund or ECB, and you get the picture. Stage 4. Now, the rape and humiliation of a nation begin under the name of austerity or structural reforms for debt that was forced upon it. Greece had sold many of its profitable assets to oligarchs and international corporations, and privatizations are ruthless, involving everything and anything that is profitable. In Greece, privatization include water, electricity, post offices, airport services, national banks, telecommunication, port authorities, which is huge in a country that is a world leader in shipping, etc. Of course, the ever-manipulative bankers always demanded immediate privatization of all media, which means that the country gets photogenic television and TV anchors who spew establishment propaganda every day and tell the people that crooked and greedy banksters are saviors, and slavery under austerity is much better than the alternative. In addition to that, the banker tyrants also gets to dictate every single line item in the government's budget. Want to cut military spending? No. Want to raise tax on the oligarchs and big corporations? No. Such micromanagement is non-existent in any other creditor-debtor relationship. So what happens after privatization despotism under bankers? Of course, the government's revenue goes down and the debt increases further. How do you fix that? Of course, cut spending, lay off public workers, cut minimum wage, cut pensions, same as our Social Security. Cut public services and raise taxes on things that would affect the 99% but not the 1%. For example, pensions have been cut in half and sales tax increased to more than 20%. All these measures have resulted in Greece going through a financial calamity that is worse than the Great Depression in the U.S. in the 1930s. After all this, what are the solutions proposed by the heartless bankers? Higher taxes, more cuts to the pension. It takes a special kind of psychopath to put a country through austerity and economic holocaust. If every Greek person had known the truth about austerity, they wouldn't have fallen for this. Same goes for Spain, Italy, Portugal, and other countries going through the austerity. The sad aspect of all this is that these not unique strategies. Since World War II, these predatory practices have been used countless times by the IMF and the World Bank in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. The essence of the New World Order, a world owned by a handful of corporations and banks, a world that is full of obedient, powerless debt serfs. So it is time for the proud people of Greece to rise up like Zeus and say no, or oxy in Greece. Put the greedy puppet masters, unpatriotic oligarchs, parasitic bankers, and corrupt politicians. Dear Greece, know that the world is praying for you and rooting for you this weekend. Vote no to austerity. Say yes to freedom, independence, self-government, sovereignty, and democracy. Go to the polls this weekend and give them a resounding, clear victory for the 99% in Greece, Europe, and the entire Western world. And I have to say, they have done it. They have voted no, which I think is fantastic because people have to. They have sent a message. What's going on here with the global national corporations' whole New World Order agenda? This is focusing more part of the Club of Rome platform, which is all interties with the one world government. Greece is just an example. So are many countries in Spain, Portugal, and so forth. And there's even been talks too that the United States and Canada may be in effect around September. So I'm not saying set in stone, my friends, but we have to prepare ourselves and don't focus on the hype out of fear. Don't manifest that the bankers are lords and saviors. They are crooks. They are political scumbags, parasites, vultures, psychic vampires, and so forth. And I digress. The Greek people took a stance. What they're doing on Iceland, hunting down the bankers. Every country needs to start doing that. Put these vultures in jail. They are nothing but the enemy of humanity. So I'm going to be hitting here the next one, which came out today from Before It's News, if I'm correct, right? Yeah, I think it's Before It's News. Actually, beforeitsnews.com, but they got some good sites. They got some good links in here, and I would like keep an eye on this. And it says here, R.I.P. Greece: how a global economic collapse has started and what you should be doing. Although I'm not a financial expert, I like to think of myself as an informed person who knows a thing or two about how the economy works and how it affects us all. While we are celebrating the 4th of July at the other end of the world, the Greeks are digging their grave. According to partial official reports, over 61% of the Greek voters voted no, rejecting the creditors' reform proposals. This has already caused a chain reaction on the stock markets, and is just the beginning. The most important European shares fell 1.7% the first moment of the session today. European banks were hit the worst, with the bank's index fall by 2.2 to 4%. U.S. stocks are also affected. When they opened today with a slight decrease, according to the financial experts. The market will keep a descending trend, although the note vote will have a huge impact in Greece, a major ripple effect in Europe. Many financial experts are trying to reassure us that the problems in Greece are facing will have only a little impact in the United States. I don't know how it is for you, but I have a feeling we are being fed a bunch of BS, considering that the U.S. debt is more than $18 trillion and is constantly rising. Not to mention that childbirth rate is decreasing all over the U.S., and that means we have fewer people working, and a greater share of the population rely on the safety net programs such as Social Security and Medicare. If you add the fact that we own China more than $1 trillion U.S. dollars, and they have been for a few years in the country with the fastest growing army. They are spending big, and their military personnel are constantly growing. And you can connect the dots and realize that the U.S. will have to pump more money in the army to keep up. And while China's military is growing, America is shrinking due to the defense budget cuts, and the entire economy is affected. Not to mention, we have some other hyenas waiting to feast on our vulnerabilities. We have North Korea, who keeps improving and developing its nuclear program under the harsh control of its crazy, infatuated leader. And he's like a mentally challenged kid playing with fire, risking burning everything around him. And we have Russia and Putin, who tries to provoke us. The number of U.S. airspace breaches by Russian planes is becoming a normality. With every occasion, and show us he doesn't give a crap about the U.S. and its allies. They are moving troops and war machines in countries in Ukraine that should show this lunatic the world's not a playground. We are spending money just to make sure that Kim Jong-un and Putin are not breaking their leash. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention about the U.S. companies who are keeping their money in offshores just to avoid paying taxes. Another element that's screwing up our economy. We have here the recipe for economic disaster and will hit us sooner than we expect, even though some refuse to believe it. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to raise a flag and tell people we should look at what Greece is going through and understand how it will affect us when it will happen in America. There are just a few main lessons we should be learning by looking at the Greeks. The banks are not your friend. The banks will bleed you dry just to save themselves. They will take your savings and leave you asking for your hard-earned money. If you look what's going on in Greece, you'll understand how banks work and how they are not more than loan sharks with proper paperwork. The banks in Greece are closed, and everyone in Greece is subjected to a limit of ATM withdrawals, not to mention that Greek government is considering taking more than 30% of every bank deposit that have more than $8,000 in it in order to save the economy. Can you imagine that it will be the case for the U.S.? The banks will take your money and they'll give you a few dollars each day to keep you afloat. What happens if you have a debt? What happens if you have a baby to take care of, or if you need medicine? Will you be on your own? You will be on your own. That's what will happen. Don't keep all your money in the bank as you lose it. Food is not abundant. Food is what you need to survive, but it's hard to be procured or produced, especially when you lack money. The pictures I've seen the past few days depicting Greeks scavenging in trash cans for food is something out of this world. It is something of a third world country. And if you add the fact that 55% of Americans have less than 3 days supply of food in their homes, and many of them don't know what to stockpile on, the future looks grim. Having no money is equal to having no food for most Americans, and many of them will turn to other ways, some less legal, to procure that much needed food. Here is where the preppers have the upper hand and why their survival pantry makes a huge difference. I bet a lot of Greeks would like to have a well-equipped pantry now, rather than looking through trash for food. For you, it may not matter if the Greeks have something to eat or not, but what should matter if you are part of the 55% of the Americans, if you're part of the smarter part. And there's a reading on that too, essential pantry items to survive the worst. And it says here, hoping for the best will not help you, but preparing will. Being a prepper has many advantages, and many Americans won't realize that until it's too late. They look at us like we're wearing a thin foil hat on our heads, and they think we are against everyone and everything since we took to live like this. The reality is totally different, and most of the preppers I know chose this lifestyle because they want to be self-sufficient and because they don't like to depend on others to live and thrive. Regardless of the crisis we will have to face, it is better to be prepared rather than hoping and waiting to see how things unfold. I visited Greece 2 times in the past 2 years to do some freelancing work. I did there, and I can say I've understood a little about how Greeks work and live. I came to the conclusion that they have a bohemian lifestyle and a mentality that tells them it can't happen to them, but if it will, they will figure it out. And that this was something I've noticed when the country already had financial problems, and even though it was a daily reality, people didn't seem to be affected by it. It's like staying in a burning house and keep telling yourself you'll be fine. If they would have been more prepared, they could have faced this crisis easier. But prepping requires work and work. It is not a good partner for bohemian lifestyle. You should be preparing for the worst, not because I'm telling you so, but because you're convinced you need to do it. And looking at the Greeks today might give you the jump start to survive the end. You need to learn about what you need to stockpile. This photo here, which I'll put everything gonna be posted on my Spreaker page. Okay, the photo you see here is from a supermarket in Athens, Greece. It was published by Yahoo News on the 4th of July. While you were enjoying your barbecue, thousands of people rushed to supermarkets to stock up on essentials such as sugar, flour, and pasta. There is a current shopping chaos in that country, and everyone is stockpiling on things that they need, and everything goes from toilet paper to batteries. People are buying in large quantities, and the shelves are getting empty. The banks will run out of money, and the people are desperate to get their hands on the supplies they need. Some will get what they need, while others will look at the empty shelves with money in their pockets. This is due to a general panic and due to the lack of basic preparedness knowledge, as they don't know what to buy and what quantities. And the reality will be the same for Americans. If we will have to face a similar scenario, panic will set in and supermarket shelves will be empty. If you tell someone you're a prepper, most of the time you will be labeled as irrational. But if you ask them about what they will need to stockpile in order to face a disaster, you'll see how the tables turn. I'd rather be called irrational than starving and sleeping in the cold. There's a video for that too on how to stockpile. It will get much worse before it gets better. The worst thing about the economic disaster is not that it's happening, is that it takes time to unfold, and in most cases it will get much worse before it gets better. Any type of disaster brings casualties and draws a precise line for things to unfold. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's good to have casualties or it's better to have it worse, not at all. I'm saying that fewer victims there are, the more competition you will have to deal with, and everyone will struggle to survive as much as you do. You will have to protect your family, since a scenario like this can affect you directly or indirectly. People will come for you and for your supplies, or you will have to give them up in case martial law is declared. Once money faucet will be closed, people will be unable to pay their utilities, which some countries are owned by foreign companies. They will be unable to pay for medicine. There will be no money for social welfare, etc. Not to mention that Greeks are used to make money from tourism, and now tourism is dying in Greece. In order to face what's coming at them, they will need to know the basic things for survival and have elementary survival skills. It is the same for everyone, regardless of your nationality. You need to know what to do to survive and how to be self-sufficient. And there is a link about how to survive martial law. And it says here, it's never to get too late. It's never too late to get prepared. It is not even late for the Greeks. And I bet some of them already start doing it when the first signs of this disaster appeared. Some of them were stockpiling on food from other resources long before this started, while others were moving their money to other banks outside Greece. The same goes for all of us. It is never too late to start prepping, and if you have the feeling you might need to do it, then you should have started yesterday. Look at the world around you. Look at what can pose a problem for you and your family, and decide if you're prepared to face the future, or if you need to start preparing for it. What Greeks are going through now is unfortunate, but at the same time, it is something to pay close attention and to learn from the events which are about to unfold. Stay safe and God bless. And there's plenty of links on here, okay, which will give you some good recommendations. And definitely, it's good. Some good information here. Gets people to think. So always observe responsibly, and you always want to prepare the best you can. And like I said, try not to go too much of a cluster. And of course, this is for other survival and preparedness articles. Visit us at prepperswill.com. So it's actually really from prepperswill.com. But definitely it is good to know. And now with technology, you can get like solar power generators, which if your power goes out, you can use the sun to control your AC or refrigerator. Okay, these are good things to keep handy. And even myself, I gotta do the same thing. Which I'm prepping a lot of areas. We got our basic tools. I have plenty of other stuff. But I've been prepping up here since 9/11, my colleague and myself, which I think is good because, like I said, we feel better. But we always gotta look at the bigger picture. Yes, I am optimistic that the people are waking up, but you have to prepare for the rough ride. Like in Greece, it was a very good example. So please, folks, I beseech everyone here from around the world, all my fellow freedom-loving sovereign thinkers that are listening to the show, be ready. Who cares about these big fancy material things? You gotta look at the bigger picture. 9/11, for an example, was part of the New World Order agenda. And what's going on in Greece, they go hand in hand. What happened in Iceland, it's like a domino thing. Always got to connect the dots. But definitely be ready at the best of your ability, not just for yourself, but for the people you love. All right? And we got to do another one here pertaining to economic boom. And this one here came out today by thenewamerican.com, and it is entitled, "Is Puerto Rico's America's Greece?" This came out written by Bob Elderman today, to be exact. And as it says here, after running deficits every year since 1973 and paying for them by borrowing, the U.S. Commonwealth of Puerto Rico has finally run out of options. On June 28th, the island's governor, Garcia Padilla, admitted that its $73 billion is in debt is not payable. "We will shortly be in a death spiral," Padilla said. "There is no other option. I would love to have an easier option. This is not politics, this is math. The math is persuasive." Padilla Public Finance Corporation, which has in the past issued some of the bonds that need to be repaid, owes $94 million on July 15th. His government development bank has a $140 million bill due by August 1st. As Stephen Rhodes, a retired federal judge who oversaw Detroit's bankruptcy case, has been hired by Padilla to find a way out, put it, "There are too many creditors and a way too many kinds of debt. Puerto Rico needs a Chapter 9 for the whole Commonwealth, even though that won't solve the problem. Even if it could be managed, Puerto Rico as a Commonwealth is prohibited from using Chapter 9 to escape a horrendous debt overhang. So it does what it can to keep the light on. On July 1st, it raised the sales tax from an already onerous 7.5% to a death spiral, including 11%, with another increase due in October. So expect Puerto Rico to have a real bad tourist economy from this, proving once again that adage that borrowing is death. Puerto Rico is exhibiting signs of an imminent death by asphyxiation. If its unemployment rate is more than twice the United States, it's poorer than Mississippi, the poorest of the 50 states. 41% of its citizens live below the poverty line. Its economy barely generates $100 billion a year and is declining. In January 2014, all three credit rating agencies downgraded the island's $73 billion debt to junk status. Its publicly owned electricity utility just barely made a $400 million payment of its debt last month, and its brightest and best continue to leave the island for the mainland for better opportunities, leaving behind an older and poorer population more dependent upon welfare state than can no longer afford them. Excuse me there. The U.S. government is not stepping in to fill the breach, and in fact, laws are aggravating the situation. The White House has repeatedly said there will be no bailouts coming, and the Jones Act is forcing importers to pay excessively high shipping costs. Under that 1920 law, only American ships with American crews that are serviced and maintained in American ports can deliver the resources that Puerto Rico naturally short of its own desperately needs. It's no wonder that the last referendum Puerto Ricans expressed a desire to leave the Commonwealth and become an independent country. In the meantime, it's lobbying Congress to allow to declare bankruptcy under Chapter 9. But even that wouldn't cure the ails Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico needs the same remedy that's sadly missing in the conversation of the referendum on Sunday in Greece, unleashing the forces of a free market. That will only happen when politicians get out of the way. Reduce personal and corporate income taxes, eliminate sales taxes, and toss an idea of a valued added tax. In other words, turn the island into a replica of Singapore, which has managed to become one of the top-tier economic powerhouses in the world, while laboring under many of the same natural constraints as Puerto Rico. Instead, all conversation is directed to what the government can do, what the government should do, what the government might do, etc. Government is the problem, as always, not the solution. Until the truth is discovered and applied, Padilla will turn out to be the prophet of his own country. We will shortly be in a death spiral, just as Greece. Just like Greece. Yeah, that is correct, my friends, and this is very, very disturbing. And I like what I'm here a few hours ago. One comment by Rebel Yale says, the fruit of capitalism isn't big business. It's the opportunity for a little guy to rise up and do something. We need to understand two things about the market. First, what is a market boom? Answer, when supply meets demand. This means that businesses are producing what the consumers want to buy. Second, what is a market bust? Answer, when supply no longer meets demand. This means that consumers are not buying what's for sale. The solution to any bust cycle is to let businesses readjust and meet the new market demand. There are only a few things that will hold a bust cycle in place. One is a natural disaster causing a disruption of some sort. The other are government economic policies. The solution is simple. Free up the market for a little guy to get a foothold. Here's where the middle class comes from. And I have to agree with that too. He's talking about, the gentleman did just mainly talk about an open free market of capitalism, not this mercantilism or neo-mercantilism or crony capitalism, etc. Okay, open free market for the little man to be the entrepreneur, not some hotshot pencil pushing twit that bend over for these big mega corporations and tyrannical banks or for the government. See, government in Latin, as I stressed before, means control of the mind. I know I may repeat myself on this for many episodes, but I have to really put that into people's brains and feed it to all my loved ones that are paying attention. This is how I observe, look, and contemplate about economics. Government's always been a big problem when it comes to that. Detroit was a very good example. They go, oh, it's capitalism. I go, actually, not an open free market base. And they go, oh, marketalism, power, capitalism. Because you know what? Because stop listening to those dorky professors and do your own research. Don't be the parrot. Try to be the sovereign thinker. This is why what happened in Puerto Rico is very disturbing. And I have family out there too, so I always have my thoughts and prayers for them. I find it very annoying, not just in Puerto Rico, but for the rest of the world. Because you got these hot shots that are trying to think they're smarter than everybody else. It's going to blow back in their face. It's going to blow back in their faces. So definitely, open free market is the answer. Get rid of these bogus taxes, ludicrous laws, and let the people in Puerto Rico prosper. That's all I have to say about that. And next one here came from consortiumnews.com. Actually, it was originally from, I saw this on Infowars.com, so I took the initiative on looking it up myself. And it came out July 4th to be exact, and it's entitled, Still Waiting for the USS Liberty's Truth. It's exclusive. During the Six-Day War in 1967, the Israeli warplanes and warships tried to sink the USS Liberty, killing 34 of the spy ship's crew. Afterwards, U.S. and Israeli officials accused the attack as an unfortunate mistake and covered up evidence of willful murder. As ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern explains. It's by Ray McGovern, by the way. Israel's chokehold over U.S. politics and politicians have been so powerful for so many decades that its obvious reality is routinely denied, a collective gagging of the truth that is itself a measure of how strong the Israeli grip is. The most potential and poignant example of how much American independence has been surrendered to Israel when it comes to the Middle East by maybe the contortions of cover-up that followed Israel's attempt to sink the USS Liberty during the Six-Day War in 1967, killing 34 American seamen. As I go on, the desire of virtually the entire U.S. political and media establishments, and for this unpleasant incident to go away. No one, it seemed, wanted to hold Israel to account or to challenge its lame excuses about an inadvertent mistake. One of the few who eventually did was a Navy Admiral, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Thomas Muir, who helped lead an independent Blue Ribbon Commission to investigate what really happened to the Liberty. Those findings were released on October 22, 2003. The introduction and the four findings stated, "We, the undersigned, have undertaken an independent investigation of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, including eyewitnesses' testimonies from surviving crew members, a review of naval and other official records, and examination of official statements by the Israeli and American governments. A study of the conclusions of all previous officials' inquiries and consideration of important new evidence and a recent statements from individuals having direct knowledge of the attack of the cover-up hereby find the following. That on June 8, 1967, after 8 hours of aerial surveillance, Israeli launched a 2-hour air and naval attack against the USS Liberty, the world's most sophisticated intelligence ship, inflicting 34 dead and 173 wounded servicemen, a casualty rate of 70% and a crew of 294. 2. That the Israeli air attack lasted approximately 25 minutes, during which time unmarked Israeli aircraft dropped napalm canisters on the USS Liberty's bridge and fired 30mm cannons and rockets into our ships, causing 821 holes, more than 100 of which were rocket-sized survivors. Estimate 30 or more sorties were flown over the ship by a minimum of 12 attacking Israeli planes, which are jamming all 5 American emergency radio channels. 3. That the torpedo boat attacks involved were not only firing of torpedoes, but the machine gunning of Liberty's firefighters and stretcher bearers as they struggled to save their ship and crew. The Israeli torpedo boats later returned to machine gun at close range 3 of the Liberty's life rafts that had been lowered into the water by survivors to rescue the most seriously wounded. 4. That there is compelling evidence that the Israel's attack was deliberately attempted to destroy an American ship and kill her entire crew. Evidence of such intent is supported by statements from Secretary of State Dean Rusk, the Undersecretary of State George Ball, former CIA Director Richard Helms, former NSA Director Lieutenant General William Odin, USA retired, Admiral Bobby Ray Emin, USN retired, and Marshall Center, former NSA Deputy Director Oliver Kirby, and Major General John Morrison, USAF retired, and former Down Ambassador Dwight Porter, U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon in 1967. The signers included Admiral Moore, General Raymond G. Davis, former Assistant Commandant, U.S. Marine Corps Rear Admiral Merlin Staring, United States Navy retired, former Judge Advocate General of the Navy, and Ambassador James Atkins, retired, former United States Ambassador to Saudi Arabia. The findings went on to make more general observations about U.S. political subservience to Israel, stating that because of Israel's powerful supporters in the United States, the White House deliberately covered up the facts of this attack from the American people. That because of that pressure, the attack was the only serious naval incident that has never been thoroughly investigated by Congress, and that there has been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history. That the truth about Israel's attack and subsequent White House cover-up continues to be officially concealed from the American people to the present day is a national disgrace. That a danger to national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate American interests to those any foreign nation, and that this policy endangers the safety of Americans and the security of the United States. John Jay is rolling in his grave. Read fellows papers 2 through 5 and understand yourself. Frightened presidents. Just weeks before his death on February 5th, 2004, Admiral Moore made a final public statement urging that the truth will be revealed about the attack on the USS Liberty, but recognize the behind-the-scenes control that Israel exerts over even the highest U.S. officials. I've never seen a president, I don't care who he is, stand up to Israel. They always get what they want. The Israelis know what is going on all the time. I got to the point where I wouldn't write anything down. If the American people understood what a grip these people have got on our government, they would rise up in arms, as quoted by Richard Curtis in A Changing Image, American Perception of the Arab-Israeli Dispute. Israeli messages intercepted on June 8, 1967, leave no doubt that the sinking the USS Liberty was the mission assigned to the attacking Israeli warplane and torpedo boats as the Six-Day War raged in the Middle East. Here, for an example, is the text of an intercepted Israeli conversation, just one of many pieces of evidence that the Israeli attack was not a mistake, but likely willful attempt to prevent the U.S. government from eavesdropping on Israel's military operation. Israeli pilot to ground control. This is an American ship. Do you want us to attack? Ground control. Yes. Follow orders. Israeli pilot. But sir, it's an American ship. I can see the flag. Ground control. Never mind. Hit it. The Israelis might have been able to report mission accomplished, 6 sunk, all crew killed, save for the bravery and surefootedness of a 23-year-old seaman, Terry Halbardier, whose actions spelled the difference between the murder of 34 of the crew and the intended massacre of all 294. Halbardier skated across the Liberty's slippery deck while being strafed in order to connection the communications cable enabled the Liberty to send out an SOS. The Israelis intercepted that message and out of fear of how the U.S. Sixth Fleet will respond, immediately broke off the attack and returned to their bases and sent an oops message to Washington confessing to their unfortunate mistake. As things turned out, the Israelis didn't need to be so concerned. When President Lyndon Johnson learned that the USS America and the USS Saratoga has launched warplanes to do battle with the forces attacking Liberty, he told Defense Secretary Rob McNamara to call all 6th Fleet Carrier Division Commander Rear Admiral Lawrence Guise and tell him to order the warplanes and return immediately to their carriers. That's why when you go LBJ, B means backstabber. We'll continue on here. According to JQ Tony Hart, a chief petty officer who monitored these conversations from a U.S. Navy communications relay station in Morocco, Guys shot back that one of his ships was under attack, telling McNamara responded, President Johnson is not going to war or embarrass an American ally over a few sailors. John Crutzen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for the Chicago Tribune, asked McNamara about this many years later. McNamara's answer is worth reading carefully. He said he had absolutely no recollection of what I did that day, except that I have a memory that I didn't know at the time was going on. Crutzen had written the most detailed and accurate account of the Israeli attack on the Liberty. It appeared in the Chicago Tribune and also in the Baltimore Sun on October 2nd, 2007. Read it and you'll understand why Crutzen got no Pulitzer of his investigative reporting on the Liberty. Instead, the Tribune laid him off in November 2008 after 24 years. Yet the Chicago Tribune are not more than butt boys to the establishment. Plain and simple. And you can hopefully the CEO and the editor will know about that because I don't give a damn. You guys are pathetic. On the few occasions when the mainstream U.S. media outlets are forced to address what happened, they blatantly ignore the incredibly rich array of hard evidence and still put out the false narrative of the mistake is really attacking the Liberty. And they attempted to conflate fact with speculation, asking why Israel would deliberately attack a ship of the U.S. Navy. While Tel Aviv wants the Liberty and its entire crew on the bottom of the Mediterranean remains a matter of speculation, there are plausible theories, including Israel's determination to keep the details of its war plan secret from everyone, including the U.S. government. On June 25th, 2015, the Real News Network interviewed a U.S. Marine survivor, which is a link on there, Sergeant Bryce Lockwood, and me, a CIA analyst in June 1967, responsible for the reporting on the activities of the Soviet Union. Paul J., the interviewer, made a strong attempt to separate fact from speculation. Part 1 presents facts. They included 1. Israel attacked USS Liberty by air and sea for 2 hours on June 8, 1967, during the 6-day Israeli-Arab War. 2. The Israelis knew they were attacking a U.S. ship and gave the order to sink it and leave no survivors. 3. The U.S. Navy betrayed its own in obeying the White House orders to parrot the Israeli excuse of mistaken identity. Not one naval officer resigned in protest. Part 2 in the interview proceeds, which is a link for those so you can check out yourself, guys, folks. Proceeds from those facts. It features speculation regarding what the Israelis may have had in mind in trying to sink the Liberty and leave no survivors. The fact is, being what they are, it should come as no surprise that trying to put a rationale behind them is a mind-boggling task. And sad to say, no U.S. official has apparently dared confront the Israelis. 2. Interviewer Paul J. understandably comes down on the obvious need for an official U.S. investigation. We know from the testimony of some of those who actually took part in the whitewash investigation commissioned by Admiral John S. McCain Jr., the father of Senator John McCain, that it was a travesty. Will the Navy finally take care of its own? There are some glimmers of hope. The annual ceremony on June 8th to honor Liberty crew that killed has typically been ignored by Navy brass. This year was different. Three senior active duty naval officers came to pay their respects. They were led by Rear Admiral Nancy A. Horton, Director, Warfare Interrogation Directorate, Office of the Chief of the Naval Operations. It struck others as well as me, not only that her presence beckoned more interest on the part of the Navy is in righting this wrong, but that the Admiral seemed genuinely interested herself in digging into what happened and what might have been done at this point to properly acknowledge what happened. The current chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Representative Devin Nunes, Republican from California, is one of the few politicians who knows and cares about the attack on the Liberty. Congressman Nunes took the initiative to facilitate the awarding of a Silver Star to Terry Halberdier, from the seaman from Texas who did what was necessary to save what remained of the crew and ship. He had to slosh through a lake of napalm and dodge Israeli state strafing of the deck to hook up the cable needed to broadcast the SOS. Halberdier was finally honored on May 27, 2009, 42 years late, but better late than never. At the small awards ceremony, Representative Nunes' office in Visalia, California, Republican Congressman pinned the Silver Star next to the Purple Heart that Halberdier found in his home mailbox 3 years before. Nunes said, "The government has kept this quiet, I think, for too long, and as I felt as my constituent, he, Halberdier, needed to get recognized for the services he made to this country." I could thank Congressman Nunes for that too. Nunes got that right. Despite the many indignities the Liberty crew has been subjected to, the mood in Visalia was pronounced a joyous one of the better late than ever, and did it take some time for a moment to sink in. While a gutsy congressman not afraid to let the truth hang out on this delicate issue, I was able to be there that day. Seldom I experienced a more poignant moment. Congressman Nunes, by virtue of the powerful position he now holds as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, is in position to extend recognition and gratitude to the rest of the Liberty crew, whether alive or dead. Halberdier died last August. Israel's seizure of the Swedish boat Marianne The international wars on June 29th en route to Gaza brought back bitter memories of the torpedo attack on the USS Liberty. The Marianne's passengers and crew were taken to the Israeli naval base in Ashdod, the same base which 3 Israeli torpedo boats sailed at noon local time on June 8, 1967, with explicit orders to join Israeli Air Force fighter bombers already engaged to try to sink the USS Liberty. Most of the 34 Liberty crew killed that day when one of the 5 torpedoes fired by the Ashdod-based torpedo hit the Liberty. Sergeant Lockwood, who was in the process of throwing sensitive material and equipment overboard, lost all the Marines under his command in that attack. According to Lockwood, the reel from the torpedo that fired the killing torpedo has been on display at the Israeli Naval Museum in Haifa, along with the life raft the Israeli boat picked up on the way back to Ashdod, adding insult to injury. Would it be too much to expect that after the latest Israeli crime on the high seas on June 29th, a Navy admiral might find his voice and pick up where Admiral Moore left off? My candidate would be unsung patriot who helped prevent the war in Iran that Vice President Dick Cheney and President George W. Bush were still planning on 2008, the last year in office, despite unanimous conclusion of the U.S. intelligence community that Iran was not working on a nuclear weapon. It took some guts to say, as Admiral J. William Fox Malone did in early March 2008, an attack on Iran isn't going to happen on my watch as CENTCOM commander, for which he was unceremoniously replaced by a far more malleable general named David Petraeus, a former insubordinate from whom Fallon had a personal as well as policy dislike. After his first meeting with Petraeus earlier year in Baghdad, Fallon report sized him up as an ass-kissing chicken shit. Yep, and David Petraeus is a butt boy. Do. Bend, drop, spread, dump, butt boy. Do. That's right, David Petraeus is a butt boy. Assuming there is no Amaretta code for naval admirals, at least not for retirees, why should we hesitate to encourage Admiral Fallon to push for a proper investigation on the attack of the USS Liberty? Perhaps while Israel's most recent act of piracy is fresh in some minds, Fallon could reboot the process of righting the wrong done to the US Liberty crew. I have to completely agree on that, because it's really I first learned about the attack on the USS Liberty by saw a little summary of it when I was younger. Soldier Fortune magazine. I was like 13 or 14 years old. So you can say I've been always believing conspiratorial incidences or participants or conspiracy theories and so forth, wherever floats your boat. You have to look at everything to a bigger picture. How accurate is it? That's the key. And now with the information age, people are learning this a lot more. Because I have a comrade of mine, who is a socialist anarchist, did take the initiative on learning about the USS Liberty himself. I believe he did a show on it. I'm gonna have to look it up. But I think it was live feed. It was like dropping signals. However, I might have to hear it myself, just to hear it. Hopefully it all got patched up. But at least people are learning this. It doesn't matter what your views are, political views. People are learning about the USS Liberty, which is very essential. And this is why, when it comes to tyranny, we all have to resist it with vigilance, one way or another. And so, I believe this. The USS Liberty, the truth has to come out. And I'll be very honest. Like I said before, every nation has a right to defend themselves and protect its people. But if you're going to provoke war, you are a demoniac, as far as I'm concerned. And the neocons and neolibs and the Charlatans in Congress better stop kissing their asses about Israel this, Israel that. It's not being anti-Semitic, but the damn truth. Foreign aid, $3 billion a year. And don't get me wrong, the people in Israel are sick of it too. Hurting their brothers and sisters with the Palestinians and people in Gaza. That needs to stop. And the people in those areas can make a difference. Don't listen to the hype. Now with the technology and the internet, you can do a lot more. The truth of the USS Liberty has to be revealed. May justice prevail or the heavens fall. That's all I'm going to say about that. Next one here came from The Intercept. Interesting stuff here. This one's entitled, During Honduras Crisis, Clinton Suggested Back Channel with Lobbyist Lanny Davis. And that says our Jezebelian scum queen's savior, Hillary Rodham Clinton. But many of us would call her Hitlery, because she is one big snake in the grass, one evil woman. And I consider her the attributes of a Jezebelian harlot to the New World Order. And I will read this and say, the Hillary Clinton emails released last week, including some telling exchanges about the June 2009 military coup that toppled democratically elected Honduran President Manuel Zelaya, a leftist who has seen as a threat to the Honduran establishment and U.S. business interest. At the time when the State Department strategized over how best to keep Zelaya out of the power while not explicitly endorsing the coup, Clinton suggested using longtime Clinton confidant Lanny Davis as a back channel to Roberto Micheli, the interim president installed after the coup. During that period, Davis was working as a consultant to a group of Honduran men who had supported the coup. An email chain discussing the meeting between Davis and State Department officials, Clinton asked, "What can he help me talk with Micheli?" Davis rose to prominence as an advisor to the Clintons during the Monica Lewinsky scandal and has since served as a high-powered crisis communications advisor to a variety of people and organizations facing negative attention in the media. From scandal-plagued for-profit college companies to African dictators, his client list has elicited frequent accusations of hypocrisy. Davis was the only foreign agent with the access to Clinton, as The Guardian and Politico have reported. Other emails point out to the lobbyists with direct access to Clinton's personal email. The request to talk to Davis came on October 22, 2009, a crucial turning point for the de facto government that had ousted Zelaya. A week later, Clinton and her top aides reportedly brokered a deal to bring Zelaya back to power through a national unity government, but the deal was no breakthrough, as some media outlets reported. Rather, there was a huge loophole providing the pro-coup Honduran legislator with a veto power to over Zelaya's return. The supposed plan fell apart, and the de facto government sponsored what many considered a fraudulent election while denying Zelaya's return. The election on November 29, 2009 was beset by violence, with an anti-coup organizers murdered before the election and the police violently suppressing an opposition rally in San Pedro Sula and shutting down left-leaning media outlets. And major international observers, including the United Nations and the Carter Center, as well as the most major opposition candidates, boycott the election. As journalist Jesse Freeston documented for the Real News Network, election paved the way for coup supporters from the National Party to solidify vote power. Rather than seeing this as a failure, the Clintons' email released last week further confirmed that the State Department has sought the permanent ouster of Zelaya all along. The State Department official bucked the demands of most Latin American countries and rushed to recognize the election as free, fair, and transparent. In the email titled "News from the Peanut Gallery," Thomas Shannon, the lead State Department negotiator for the Honduras talks, gushed over the election results in a message that was sent to Secretary Clinton. The turnout, probably a record, and the clear rejection of the Liberal Party shows our approach was the right one, wrote Shannon, who recommended that the U.S. should congratulate the Honduran people and to connect today's votes to the deep democratic vocation of the Honduran people. Shannon, then Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, expressed gratitude that Zelaya was out of power, referring to the ousted president as a failed leader. The Shannon email showed that we knew all along the U.S. wanted the elections to solidify the changes wrought by the coup, said Dan Beaton, International Communications Director at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. It was Shannon Noble who signed the accord to bring Zelaya back to Honduras, and then shocked the Latin American leaders by suggesting on CNN days later that the U.S. would recognize the results of the election even if the Zelaya was not restored. Despite claims to media outlets that they were working to restore the democratically elected Honduran government, the U.S. made other efforts to ensure the coup's government grip on power. In October 2009, the United States blocked a resolution from the Organization of American States requiring Zelaya's return as a precondition for elections. The U.S. also failed to officially determine that a military coup occurred. It did not cut off aid to Honduras as required by the law following a coup. In August 2009, email chain with Holler Cole, then the State Department legal advisor, discussed how the deal with the foreign aid issued, which in Honduras is largely administered through a Millennium Challenge Corporation. The email chain carried the subject line, Honduras military coup decision. It includes an email from coup noting that the Honduras might fall under legal prohibitions on assistance. Cole write that Secretary Clinton, chair of the MCC board, would have a considerable voice over the determination of Honduras as a coup country. Unfortunately, much of the memo Cole prepared is redacted, and Clinton's response is not revealed in the email chain. In her 2014 book, Hard Choices, Clinton rarely admits that the days after the coup, she spoke with leaders in the Western Hemisphere about a plan to restore order in Honduras and ensure that free and fair elections could be held quickly and legitimately, which would render the question of Zelaya moot. Mark Weisbrot, the co-director for the Center for Economic and Policy Research, which has monitored the same human rights situation in Honduras, refers to this line as a bold confession. Zelaya's return was anything but moot. Weisbrot has argued, noting that Latin America leaders and the United Nations General Assembly demanded Zelaya's return. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So, yeah, you gotta always look at the bigger picture. This is more of the United States picking and sticking their nose that don't belong. And we all know about Hillary Clinton, too. She's one evil, treasonous woman, which I have a lot of contempt for. And people think, people believe she should be a great president. They're living in a wet dream. And I say that out of respect. To hell with this person and the rest of the stooges that are owned by the One World Order, Council of Foreign Relations, etc. Here's a question to those Clinton fans. If you remember watching the show, the pre-inaugural party episode, that was a special that was done by Barbara Streisand the day before President Bill Clinton's inauguration. She said, even though she's from Chicago, Illinois, Arkansas was her home state. So how come she never take the initiative of running for Senate in Arkansas, but instead New York? Think about that thoroughly. That's all I need to say. Observe responsibly, my friends. Next one here, give a little note, which is by Lou Rockwell. It's a little note that came out, an email to be exact, by Lou and H. Rockwell to his friend Mark Palin, which is entitled, "The Church Must Resist the Encroaching State." It says here, writes friend Mark Palin, "The church could easily remove itself from civil marriage business by refusing to allow its priests any longer to act as an agent for the state for purposes of marriage. That would be a mild form of active resistance to the government and would also cut off a legal path to the homosexual lobby ever trying to force priests to perform such ceremonies based on the fact that the priests are state agents. but will mostly statist bishops, their budget stuffed with $1 billion in federal welfare, have the courage to do the right thing? Thanks to Geoengineering. He did that. He wrote that letter today at 12:08 p.m. 10th Amendment, my friends. And I'm not, like I said, if you hear my past episodes about the marriage and so forth, yeah, it's understandable, but you cannot force people or conscript those to have certain groups get married, regardless of their creed. Now, to me, that's irrelevant. That's why the whole gay marriage thing, that decision they made in Supreme Court, you have to look the fine print. The title may sound good, it might sound wonderful, dandy, but if you're going to force people who disagrees to have them get married, that's when you violate their space too. It don't work both ways. It's got to be done by consent, honor, and in good faith. Hey, if you want to, one group will do gay marriages. That's the Church of Satan. I'll say if you want to get married, contact Peter Gilmore. He'll probably get you a priest from that own jurisdiction to do the marriage ceremony. Or there's things like Sunshine Cathedrals. Okay, if they want to do that, that's fine. But don't force other people. That's violating your space, and that's disrespectful. And it works all angles. This is just an example. The people that know me well enough understand where I'm coming from. It's called principle. I always support rights of individuals, but don't violate others. Period. That's why Lou Rockwell sent it to Mr. Pilot, and I have to agree. I respect him for that. All right. Last but not least, this is some good news. I would say it's some good news. Yeah. And one moment here. This is entitled, New Mexico Cops Worry That Forfeiture Reforms Will Hurt Drug War. Now, and What's the Downside? Is by Jacob Solom. As it reads, last spring, the New Mexico legislature unanimously enacted a law that abolished the civil forfeiture, requiring government to obtain a conviction before taking property allegedly linked to crime, and assigns revenue from seizures to the state's general fund instead of letting law enforcement agencies keep it. The Farmington Daily Times reports that New Mexico cops missed the money, saying may just seize less stuff now that they no longer have a profit motive. They say they may even force to dial back the war on drugs. So far, in other words, there's no downside. We're going not to try to seize, said Farmington Police Chief Steve Abbey. Sergeant Kyle Dowdy, director of the Regional Narcotics 2 Task Force, said that in recent years, forfeiture has accounted for a quarter of its budget. Dowdy said the task force may have to reduce the amount of equipment it buys, such as wiretaps and cameras, and train less often. He adds that training is essential to catching criminals who are constantly changing the methods they use to distribute drugs. Dowdy also worries that the anti-drug task force like this will have contended with the conflict between a new ban on keeping seized property and federal grant conditions, which also include a requirement that seized vehicles and equipment be used for law enforcement. The legislature who voted for New Mexico's reforms mainly sought perfect to innocent owners by making forfeiture harder and less financially rewarding for the agencies initiating it. But if those changes also result in fewer drug busts and fewer people sent to prison for engaging in peaceful activities, that only strengthening the case for revoking cops' license to steal. Absolutely. And you know what I gotta say about that to those cops? I should have my violin come out. Give me sympathy, opus wine. I'm glad this happened, because even in their state constitution, you're innocent until proven guilty, and everything's got to be done by due process. In your own state constitution, to be exact. You can look it up yourself. I'm gonna post it on. I'm gonna post it on there as well. Okay, I think it's Article 1 if I'm correct. Article 1 and 2, something like that. But there's sections in there about due process. And you know what? And these clowns don't like it? Well, too bad. My heart bleeds. I'm glad this is happening. It hurts. That forfeiture will hurt the drug war? Good. Hey, the war on drugs is the war with ourselves, my friends. No victim, no crime. If it was, doing with children, yeah, you got to go through due process and forfeiture too. Innocent to proven guilty, not guilty to proven innocent. And you know what? These cops don't like it. Go somewhere else. Go contaminate space somewhere else. That's all I have to say, and I'm happy this happened. All right. Well, my friends, I'd like to thank everyone for your time. I really appreciate it. And plus, feel free to download this episode and share it with everyone throughout your network. If you got any questions, recommendations, love letters, hate letters, criticisms, compliments, always use decorum. Hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, and send your comments to iHeartRadio, or you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is all together, at gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.